For years, the palace allowed the public to believe Meghan had moved freely through the private world of the monarchy. But one woman who served beside Queen Elizabeth II has now shattered that illusion. According to former Lady-in-Waiting Lady Margaret Ashcombe, there was one room at Windsor Castle Meghan repeatedly wished to enter, and one unmistakable command from the Queen ensured that its door remained closed to her forever. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Windsor Castle meant more to the Queen than ceremony or tradition. It was her emotional sanctuary, where public duty loosened its grip. Within those walls, she kept the memories that belonged to neither crowds nor history. That was why one closed door carried weight. Lady Margaret Ashcombe understood that world. During a recorded interview after royal service, the former Lady-in-Waiting described how her hands tightened around a teacup and her voice lowered. Lady-in-Waiting is a trusted attendant who assists a senior royal with personal duties, correspondence, and private engagements. Margaret had spent decades arranging audiences and protecting letters. Margaret revealed that Elizabeth personally ordered Meghan never to enter her private audience room without a direct invitation. An audience room is a secluded chamber where the sovereign holds confidential meetings, away from public ceremony. No invitation came. The instruction was not casual or temporary. It was written into the household diary, the internal record used by royal staff, so every equerry responsible for access knew the restriction. Meghan discovered the truth beside Prince Harry. She arrived expecting a private meeting when an equerry stepped forward and quietly told her the room was unavailable. An equerry is a royal aide who manages arrangements and access around the sovereign. Harry stiffened, for Meghan's expression changed. Neither had expected a refusal delivered with such finality. The chamber held far more than furniture. Elizabeth kept personal correspondence there, alongside family photographs, handwritten notes, confidential red boxes, and objects linked to decisions never entered into palace minutes. Red boxes are secure cases, carrying official government and royal papers. Access meant intimacy and exposure to memories the monarch guarded fiercely. Margaret insisted the restriction came from judgment, not scheduling. Elizabeth had seen, heard, or understood something that convinced her caution was necessary. That left the darkest question hanging over Windsor. What had Meghan done to make the Queen believe she could not be trusted beyond that door? To understand why the Queen drew such a severe boundary, the story must move beyond the locked room and into the private fears, ambitions, and divided loyalties of the people standing outside it. The locked door did not separate only two rooms. It separated two completely different understandings of royal life. Meghan saw private access as evidence that she had finally been accepted into the family's inner circle. Queen Elizabeth saw that same access as something far more sacred, a privilege earned through patience, discretion, and years of unquestioned loyalty. Between them stood Harry, desperate to believe love could overcome a boundary built across generations. Meghan had entered royal life, expecting her marriage to change more than her public position. She believed becoming the Duchess of Sussex, a title given to her when she married into the royal family, would bring emotional closeness as well as ceremonial status. Crowds welcomed her. Staff addressed her formally. She stood beside Harry during major engagements. At inside Windsor, certain passages and conversations remained beyond her reach. Contrast cut deeply because she was publicly presented as family, while privately feeling kept at a careful distance. The Queen treated the audience room differently from every ceremonial chamber. There, the monarch read personal letters, received relatives without aids, and faced burdens she could not share before cameras or courtiers. It was not simply a royal office. It was where duty became grief, where family problems arrived without prepared speeches, and where decades of private memory rested within arm's reach. Elizabeth believed entry had to be earned slowly, because one careless disclosure could wound both the crown and the people behind it. Meghan turned to Harry inside their Windsor residence and asked the question he had been trying to avoid. Why was she trusted to represent the monarchy before millions had excluded when the family spoke honestly behind closed doors? Her frustration was no longer about one chamber. It was about what the refusal seemed to say. She feared the palace accepted her usefulness, but doubted her character. Harry felt the humiliation as sharply as she did. He told his wife he would speak directly to his grandmother, though he knew household boundaries surrounding the sovereign were rarely challenged. Prince understood that approaching Elizabeth would force her to choose between reassuring him and defending a rule she considered essential. Lady Margaret later described that meeting in a recorded account of her royal service. She remembered Harry making his request, while the Queen listened without interruption. Elizabeth did not argue. She placed her pen beside the red box and answered that affection and access were not the same thing. The secure case beside her carried official papers, but the sentence carried something heavier. Love did not erase caution. Margaret then noticed a slim folder beside the monarch's chair. Notes from earlier conversations involving Meghan were already inside. The decision had begun long before Harry entered, and one particular incident had transformed concern into prohibition. The Windsor restriction had not begun with a clash at the door. It began months earlier, during a private royal occasion, when a single request crossed a line the Queen never forgot. Every royal rupture has a moment before which reconciliation is still possible. For Meghan and Queen Elizabeth, that moment came during a private tea at Windsor, when a seemingly innocent conversation turned toward family papers that had never been intended for public eyes. Those present would later remember the silence that followed, the Queen's expression becoming unreadable, and one carefully worded request that permanently altered Meghan's position inside the royal household. Meghan arrived several months after her wedding, believing the invitation offered more than polite conversation. Elizabeth had asked her to discuss charitable responsibilities and the difficult adjustment to life inside the institution. A royal charity is an organization publicly supported by a member of the family to bring attention and funding to a cause. For the Duchess, the meeting offered a chance to prove that her ideas could serve both vulnerable people and the monarchy she had joined. Lady Margaret Ashcombe served the tea and remained near the doorway. She later described the exchange in a recorded account of her years in royal service, recalling how warmly the conversation began. Margaret had been trained to hear without reacting, and to leave private words inside private rooms. Yet she sensed the atmosphere change when Meghan moved from charitable work to the memory of Diana. Meghan asked whether she might examine selected letters written by Princess Diana and stored near the Queen's private audience room. She explained that understanding the late princess could help her support Harry, whose grief still shaped his relationship with the palace. The request sounded compassionate. It also touched the most protected wound in the family. Elizabeth became completely still. The monarch looked at Meghan for several seconds before answering that private grief must never be converted into royal material, however noble the stated purpose. Diana's letters were not public resources. They were the words of a mother, a former daughter-in-law, and a woman whose private pain had already been exposed, far beyond her control. Meghan did not retreat. She suggested that selected passages might inspire a future charitable project focused on emotional suffering and families under public pressure. Queen closed the small leather notebook beside her. That single movement ended the discussion. She thanked the Duchess for coming and signaled that the tea was over. Margaret waited until Meghan had left before turning toward Elizabeth. The monarch's instruction was calm and exact. The Duchess was not to enter the private audience room or examine any personal family archive without the sovereign physically present. Family archive is a protected collection of letters, records, and personal documents preserved for private or historical use. Margaret understood immediately that this was no passing concern. Months later, Meghan would confront the woman enforcing that command, and the hurt behind her anger would finally break through. What had begun as a guarded instruction behind closed doors was about to become a face-to-face collision between a duchess demanding an explanation and a servant sworn to protect the Queen's confidence. Confrontation happened without cameras, without announcements, and without the polished restraint the palace showed the outside world. Meghan encountered Lady Margaret near the private corridor at Windsor and demanded to know why. She continued to be treated as a risk. Former lady-in-waiting had spent a lifetime avoiding emotional scenes. Yet on that afternoon, she found herself standing between an angry duchess and an order issued personally by the Queen. Lady Margaret Ashcombe knew she could not explain everything. Her role required her to protect the monarch's privacy, even when silence made her appear cruel. The inner apartment's private rooms reserved for the sovereign, close relatives, and approved guests were controlled through direct instructions, not personal preference. Margaret could enforce the boundary. She could not expose the private conversation that had created it. That left her trapped between duty and accusation. Meghan approached after learning that another member of the family had been received inside the audience room, while she had once again remained outside. The exclusion struck harder because the chamber represented trust, not convenience. She had attended ceremonies, accepted public pressure, and carried out engagements in the crown's name. Yet when the family entered its most private space, the Duchess was still treated as someone whose presence required permission. Meghan stopped before Margaret and asked whether she personally believed the Duchess was unworthy of entering. Her voice carried anger, but beneath it was humiliation. Margaret's expression tightened. She answered that her opinion had never governed the door, and that she was carrying out the Queen's command. The response offered no comfort. It confirmed that the barrier reached higher than any servant Meghan could confront. Harry arrived before the exchange could end. He moved beside his wife and told the former attendant that the restriction was damaging Meghan, making their position within the family impossible. The prince argued that no marriage could survive endless public acceptance, paired with private suspicion. Margaret listened, but she refused to pretend that she possessed authority she had never held. Margaret finally spoke with painful clarity. Elizabeth had issued the instruction after Meghan requested access to Diana's private letters. Queen had viewed that request not simply as concern for Harry, but as a warning that deeply personal grief might be drawn into a public project. Meghan's anger gave way to disbelief. She had believed she was offering compassion. The monarch had heard danger. The private door opened before anyone could answer. Elizabeth stood beyond it, silent and fully aware of the confrontation. She looked toward Harry, then Meghan, but offered no invitation. The door closed again. That silence forced Harry toward a choice he could no longer avoid. Meghan had confronted the guardian. Margaret had never possessed the authority to change the decision. That power belonged to a monarch, now facing pressure from her own grandson. There was no committee vote, no legal hearing, and no compromise drafted by anxious courtiers. The decision belonged to one person. Queen Elizabeth had spent decades learning that the survival of the monarchy often depended on boundaries invisible to the public. Now Harry was asking her to remove one of those boundaries for Meghan, and the monarch understood. Whatever answer she gave would reach far beyond a single room at Windsor. Harry entered the private meeting, carrying anger he was struggling to control. Access to the sovereign's working rooms was granted personally by the monarch, not automatically earned through marriage, title, or position in the line of succession, the official order determining who could inherit the throne. Even the closest relatives waited for permission. Yet the prince believed Meghan's situation had become different, because the repeated refusal now felt like a judgment against her character. The audience room carried a deeper weight than its name suggested. Confidential state papers sometimes passed through it, but its greatest importance came from conversations that were never recorded. Family members entered burdened by fear, grief, or shame, and spoke without aides nearby. Elizabeth guarded that privacy, because one exposed confession could destroy relationships, damage public trust, and turn private suffering into permanent history. Harry chose his words carefully. He told the Queen that Meghan no longer viewed the restriction as a simple rule. His wife saw it as proof that the family welcomed her during ceremonies, but distrusted her when the doors closed. The exclusion had become a symbol, and that symbol was tearing at their marriage, as well as their connection to the crown. Elizabeth listened with sadness, rather than anger. She understood that Meghan felt wounded, but she told her grandson that protecting family memory remained part of her duty. The monarch could offer kindness, conversation, and support. She could not surrender every boundary simply because enforcing it caused pain. For her, affection was personal. Access carried consequences. Queen reached for the slim folder beside her chair. She opened it and handed Harry a written summary of the Windsor tea, including Meghan's request to examine Diana's private letters, and her second suggestion that those words might inspire a charitable project. The prince read every line, and he lowered the pages. He did not challenge the wording, because he knew the account captured what had been said. Elizabeth delivered her final answer without cruelty. Meghan could meet her elsewhere in Windsor Castle and speak with her privately under appropriate circumstances. The audience room and the family papers connected to it would remain closed to the Duchess. The decision would not be reconsidered. Harry left knowing there was nothing more to negotiate. He now had to return to Meghan and repeat the answer that would confirm her deepest fear. The Queen's words ended the argument inside the room, but outside it, they triggered consequences that spread through the Sussex household almost immediately. When Harry returned, Meghan knew the answer before he spoke. His shoulders were lowered, his voice restrained, and the folder he had carried into the meeting was no longer in his hands. The Queen had not reconsidered. In that quiet domestic moment, the locked audience room became something larger than a palace restriction. Meghan, it became proof that the institution had already decided who she was and would never permit her to become anything else. Harry told Meghan that his grandmother would still receive her socially and speak with her elsewhere, at Windsor. The private chamber, Diana's letters, and the family papers surrounding them would remain forbidden. Distinction offered little comfort. Social reception meant a controlled meeting without access to the monarch's confidential work or personal records. Meghan heard only the deeper message. She could be welcomed as a guest, while still being distrusted as family. Palace staff acted quickly after the meeting. They were instructed to prevent further requests concerning the room, and to refer any challenge directly to the sovereign's senior household. The royal household is the network of aides and officials who organize the monarch's private and public duties. What had begun as a painful disagreement was now procedure. Procedure was harder to question because it carried no emotion, only obedience. Meghan sat without answering. Then she removed her wedding ring and turned it slowly between her fingers. She asked Harry whether any loyalty she showed would ever be enough. She had endured scrutiny, followed schedules, and represented the crown before strangers. Yet inside the family, she felt she was still being tested against rules no one had fully explained. Harry reacted with frustration. He told his wife that he had challenged the Queen as firmly as he could, without breaking their partnership entirely. Meghan answered that the problem was not his courage. The problem was a palace that expected her to keep proving she deserved trust, while offering no clear moment when that proof would finally be accepted. Lady Margaret Ashcombe soon learned that Meghan had begun keeping written accounts of private disagreements. During a documented conversation with a senior aide, the former attendant admitted that the news troubled her. Margaret feared the Windsor dispute might one day become public, turning the Queen's concern about confidentiality into a warning that appeared justified after the fact. A senior aide then removed Meghan's name from the access list for the private apartments. An access list identifies relatives and officials permitted to approach restricted royal rooms without advance approval. The consequence had spread beyond one door. The Duchess would now require clearance before entering an entire part of Windsor. Yet the fracture was not complete. Elizabeth requested one final meeting with Meghan, without Harry, Margaret, or any advisor present. The restriction had hardened into palace procedure. But before distance became permanent, two women met alone and spoke without the protection of intermediaries. The turning point did not come through an apology or a dramatic reversal. It came during a private encounter between Queen Elizabeth and Meghan in a small sitting room, away from the disputed corridor. No aides remained. Harry was not present. For the first time, the monarch and the Duchess confronted the wound directly, not as symbols, trapped inside opposing narratives, but as two women who believed they had each been misunderstood by the other. Elizabeth had requested the meeting after learning how deeply the restriction was affecting Meghan's marriage and her relationship with the wider family. The chosen room contained no government papers, private letters, or royal archives. A royal archive is a protected collection of personal and official records preserved by the monarchy. By meeting there, the Queen offered privacy and respect without surrendering the boundary she symbolized. Meghan spoke first. She told the monarch that the exclusion had made her feel dangerous, unwanted, and permanently judged. She had believed her interest in Diana's letters came from compassion for Harry, not ambition. That the palace had treated her request as evidence that she could not be trusted. The Duchess admitted that every public smile had become harder because she knew a private instruction was following her through Windsor. Elizabeth did not dismiss the pain. She answered that she had never feared Meghan's personality or intelligence. What troubled her was the growing confusion between private family suffering and public royal purpose. Diana's memory already carried grief, anger, and public fascination. The Queen believed turning personal letters into material for a charitable campaign would cross a line that could never be uncrossed, whatever Meghan's intentions. The monarch then revealed something the Duchess had not expected. Charles and William had also been denied access to certain family letters at sensitive moments. The Prince of Wales was the title then held by Charles, as the heir expected to inherit the throne. The restriction was not invented solely to humiliate Meghan, but her repeated request had caused the Queen to apply that protection directly and firmly to her. Meghan asked the question that had haunted her since the door first closed. Had Elizabeth ever intended to trust her? The Queen paused before answering. Trust could have grown, she said, but it could not be demanded through a doorway, nor could it be proven by gaining possession of another woman's private words. Meghan did not receive the access she had wanted, yet she finally understood that the refusal had come from fear of exposure, not simple dislike. Meghan left without victory, but not without clarity. At the same moment, whispers about the forbidden room were already escaping beyond Windsor. The private confrontation brought clarity between the two women, but once the Windsor secret reached the public, their quiet exchange was transformed into a national argument about trust, privacy, and belonging. The story exploded because the room was more powerful as a symbol than as a physical place. To some, the Queen's order represented wisdom and necessary caution. To others, it proved that Meghan had entered a family determined to keep her near the ceremony, but far from its emotional center. Within hours, one closed Windsor door became the image through which Britain debated loyalty, prejudice, privacy, and the cost of marrying into the crown. Lady Margaret Ashcombe brought the secret into public view during an extended recorded interview about royal service, private boundaries, and the final years of Queen Elizabeth's reign. Margaret described the restriction carefully, but her restraint only made the account more powerful. She confirmed that the instruction came directly from the monarch, and that Meghan had never received the invitation required to enter. The interview mattered because it transformed years of private tension into a documented account from someone who had stood close to the decision. Palace communications staff responded before the day was over. A communications office is the team responsible for answering press questions and protecting the public position of the royal family. Officials refused to discuss Meghan's individual access, yet their statement confirmed that private apartments could be entered only through the sovereign's invitation. The wording avoided the dispute, while quietly supporting the rule at its center. Harry watched the television coverage from home and grew tense as commentators divided the story into simple accusations. One presenter called the restriction necessary discipline. Another described it as proof that Meghan had never been emotionally welcomed. Prince heard strangers debate obedience and entitlement, while the painful conversation with his grandmother was reduced to a headline. Meghan felt the old humiliation return. Broadcasters repeatedly placed photographs of her walking through Windsor corridors, beside images of a closed gilded door. She had left her final meeting with Elizabeth understanding the monarch's fear more clearly. Now that private understanding disappeared beneath public anger, the Duchess was once again presented, either as a victim, without fault, or an intruder, without first. Controversy reached its sharpest point on the front page of the fictional London Chronicle. Beneath a full-width photograph of Windsor Castle appeared the words, "The room the Queen kept from Meghan." That same morning, a broadcaster called it the most revealing locked door in modern royal history, turning a family boundary into a national symbol. Crowds gathered outside Henry VIII Gate, a public entrance used to approach Windsor Castle. Meghan's supporters held signs demanding fairness. Others left handwritten notes praising the late Queen for protecting Diana's private letters. Grief and anger now occupied the same pavement. Margaret watched the division deepen and prepared to disclose one final detail: why Elizabeth never regretted the restriction, even after recognizing Meghan's pain. Public opinion had turned the room into a battlefield, but the final meaning of the decision could only come from the woman who witnessed both the Queen's resolve and Meghan's hurt. Lady Margaret's final verdict contained neither triumph nor condemnation. She did not describe Meghan as an enemy, nor Queen Elizabeth as a woman incapable of compassion. Instead, she described a collision between two needs that could never fully coexist: Meghan's to feel trusted, and the monarch's determination to protect a private world already scarred by exposure. The door remained closed because, in the Queen's judgment, some memories belong to people, not to the institution, the press, or history. Lady Margaret Ashcombe explained her conclusion during her final recorded conversation about the Windsor restriction. She said Elizabeth had viewed the audience room as a place of responsibility, rather than privilege. Access depended on the emotional and constitutional risks surrounding each moment. Constitutional risk means a threat to the rules, duties, or public trust supporting the monarchy. Queen understood that private words could become public weapons once they left her protection. Meghan's exclusion also revealed the narrow boundary on which royal life survived. The monarchy asked its members to perform service before millions, while hiding their most painful family struggles from those same people. The Duchess could represent the crown in public, yet she could still be denied access in private. That contrast wounded Meghan, because it made belonging feel conditional. It also strengthened Elizabeth's resolve, because she believed uncontrolled exposure could damage both the institution and the human beings trapped inside it. Margaret paused before admitting that she had seen genuine pain in Meghan's face. The former attendant understood that whatever the Queen intended, the Duchess experienced the order as rejection. She had wanted proof of trust. Instead, she received a boundary that followed her through Windsor and changed how she viewed the entire family. Margaret also remembered Elizabeth sitting alone after her private meeting with Meghan. The monarch quietly admitted that protecting the crown sometimes meant hurting people she'd rather have reassured. She felt the cost, yet she did not reverse the decision. The former lady-in-waiting then disclosed the detail that settled the matter. Elizabeth never opened Diana's private letters for a public project, never transferred them into a royal campaign, and never allowed the audience room to become a stage for family grievance. Meghan eventually accepted that the door would remain closed. She did not agree with the judgment. She understood that forcing entry would destroy the trust she had hoped to earn. The restriction proved neither that Meghan lacked value nor that the Queen lacked compassion. It exposed the monarchy's deepest contradiction. Marriage could make someone royal, but it could not guarantee entry into the family's most protected memories. Elizabeth chose privacy over reassurance. Meghan carried the wound of that choice. Neither emerged untouched, but Diana's letters remained private, and the boundary endured. The Windsor door never opened for Meghan, yet its final meaning was no longer mysterious. It stood as Queen Elizabeth's uncompromising declaration that entry into the royal family could be granted by marriage, while entry into its most private memories had to be earned and could still be refused. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.